Welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Betty Chen. UK think tank Center for Economics and Business Research predicts China will be the top global economy by 2037. Taiwan's economic growth, however, faces potential hurdles from China's unification drives, even without military action. Today's focus is on how Taiwan can reduce reliance on China, enhancing economic growth and strategic advantage by capitalizing on opportunities and avoiding risks. Joining us today are Kristy Tsun Tzu Hsu, Chung-Hua Institution for Economic Research, Taiwan ASEAN Studies Center Director, and Marcin Jerzewski, Taiwan Office Head, European Value Center for Security Policy. A very warm welcome to both of you on the show. UK think tank Center for Economics and Business Research released its latest forecast report at the end of December, stating that China's GDP will surpass the United States by 2037, becoming the world's largest economy. The report lists the predicted top 10 economies by 2038 as follows: China, the United States, India, Japan, Germany, the United Kingdom, France, Brazil, South Korea, and Canada. Originally, CEBR predicted 3 years ago that China would become the world's largest economy by 2028, and we now see the forecast being extended to 2037. So, Professor Hsu, what led to the adjustment in terms of the timeline, and do you think that there's any influence from China's economic policy on this kind of forecast?
Yes, it is very interesting to look back and compare all the forecasts made at different timing. And the forecast you mentioned made 3 years ago, and also other similar forecasts made around 2021 or 2020 were actually based on a scenario or assumptions that China would continue strong economic growth at 5 or 5.7% through 2025, and then a bit slowed down to about 4.7% from 26 to 2030. And then it's also made at that time that on the scenario that the United States will maintain a growth rate of about 2% per year or less than 2%. However, that scenario or that assumption no longer existed, because although China managed to maintain a 5% growth rate last year, 2023, its economy is slowing down and now facing a deep trouble. And therefore, right now, the forecast now readjust their forecast by China to continue its growth rate for about 3.5% through 2025, and then even lower to 2030. Mm-hmm. And therefore, it's a math question that all these forecasts will have to readjust and also extend their timeline. And regarding your second question, yes, there are a lot of external factors that China face in its coming economic performance. However, as you mentioned, China's own policy responses also worsen its economic trouble. This includes China's crackdown earlier on its technology sector as well as its real estate sector. And also China is now increasing its state control and intervention in its economy and also on foreign investment. Just give you one example, the passage of the legislation of Anti-Espionage Act last year actually raised a lot of risks for investment in China. And therefore, we observe from the current trend that a lot of foreign investment are relocating away or withdraw from China. This implies the end of an age that China receive a huge inflow of capital, which has been a very important economic driver and also job creator in China for 2 to 3 decades.
So based on this forecast, the precondition is that no matter what happened, whether it's economic slowdown or saying, just like what Professor Hsu said, there are some political factors like the implementation of the anti-espionage law, China will eventually become the global largest economy. Do you think that forecast is correct?
Well, it's also very interesting because for the past decade, scholars and think tanks have continuously posed the question, when is China going to overtake United States to become the world's largest economy. It's a matter of time. It's not if China is going to do that. However, in recent discussions, some scholars and think tanks have a second thought, and now they begin to wonder whether China is eventually going to overtake the United States. And the reasons are, we see China definitely going to slow down in economic growth, and also China is facing a lot of structural hurdles, including the aging population and also the increasing tension between China and most of other Western countries. And therefore, China is under the pressure, and we don't know when China is going to overtake the United States, and probably it will be 10 years or 15 years, or it will never become the largest economy in the world.
So now to you, Marcin. Like two parts question. First, do you agree that, or do you believe that China will eventually become the global largest economy? And if that holds true, how will that change the global economic landscape? And from a European perspective, how will that affect Europe?
Certainly. Should China become the world's largest economy, it would definitely have important implications, not only for its economic, but also military might. And it would have pronounced international significance. However, if we look at the data of the Center for Economic and Business Research, even if their predictions prove to be true and China does in fact overtake the United States as the world's largest economy, it might not be for that long, because based on the data, demographics are working to China's disadvantage, and the United States is likely to regain its status of the world's largest economy after approximately 20 years of China's dominance. If we look even farther into the future, by around 2080, India is likely to overtake both China and the United States as the world's largest economy. So when it comes to assessing the impact on the collective West, the United States and the European Union, the ball is essentially in China's court. As the world's largest economy, China will have two policy choices. It can either adopt a more cooperative approach to dealing with world's economies, understanding that it will not hold its leadership position forever, or it might look at this 2-decade or so period as a narrow window of opportunity to realize its national objectives, such as a forced annexation of Taiwan or increasing its leverage over certain countries and strategic technologies.
You talk about a very important factor, demographics. A recent Financial Times report highlights that China's goal to become the leading global economy faces hurdles due to a declining birth rate, resulting in labor shortages. And I just want to know that how significant is this affecting China's economy? Just talk about the labor shortage and also the low birth rate, Professor Hsu.
Yes, currently there have been a lot of discussion on China's the most two important factors in its structural vulnerability to its long-term economic growth. One is the aging population, another is the a shortage of labor, and these demographic challenges are something that China have to deal with, and plus that currently there are something more acute to Chinese economy and the government, which is the very high youth unemployment rate. China earlier last year registered its youth unemployment rate to be around 21%. However, it stopped releasing this kind of data because it's too sensitive and also too frustrating. However, we believe that this aging population together with the shortage of labor is going to be something that will really impede Chinese economic growth. And as for the aging population, and last year marks the year since 1961 that China deaths outnumber its births. And also the labor shortage is something that is really hurting Chinese manufacturing industry. And therefore China is trying to do by a number of measures, including that it's enhancing and its economic integration, trying to shift its manufacturing or labor-intensive manufacturing to its neighboring countries, including Vietnam, Cambodia, or even even to Bangladesh. And also it's trying to also increase and enhance its automation and trying to hire more value added to its industry. However, this will take time. So we do believe that in the future, this is going to be something that China has to pay a lot of attention.
Indeed, this is a very serious problem. So even for Taiwan, we're facing aging population and also labor shortage is another serious issue. So now I would like to direct my attention to Marcin. At the 2023 G7 summit, Western nations sought to lessen their reliance on China by adopting a de-risk policy. So based on your observation, do you think that this kind of de-risking policy is really working?
I think that it remains to be seen to what extent the European de-risking strategy vis-à-vis China can be successful. The European Union is a bloc consisting of 27 sovereign member states, and we should remember that while the EU and especially the European Commission under the leadership of Ursula von der Leyen have really ambitious goals pertaining to the EU's economic security, the division of responsibilities here is actually quite difficult, because economic security lies at the nexus of something which belongs to the member states' competence, which is national security, and something which belongs to the competence of the European Union, which is external trade and investment policy. So it remains to be seen also after the upcoming 2024 elections to the European Parliament, to what extent member states will be willing to grant more powers to the European Commission to go forward with de-risking measures. However, looking at the past 6 months or so, we have seen that the European Union really made progress on its de-risking agenda. That includes two types of measures, measures which are aimed at protection and measures which are aimed at developing new partnerships. So in this first group of measures, we see, for instance, the anti-coercion instrument and the development of a list of critical technologies for Europeans, also plans to establish new financing lines under the Strategic Technology European Platform, STEP. And when it comes to new partnerships, the European Union successfully revamped its trade agreement with Chile, also signing a memorandum of understanding with the Latin American country on supply chains of critical raw materials, and concluded similar MOUs with the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Zambia. So this geographic diversification is a sign that the EU is really putting its money where its mouth is in terms of the risking strategies.
So indeed, geographical diversification is very important. In response to geopolitical tensions and China's economic downturn, nations are restructuring their supply chains, shifting away from reliance on China to mitigate risks. Taiwan, heavily reliant on trade with China and located in a geopolitically volatile region, has methodically developed its own strategies over time to decrease its dependence on China. So statistics show that from January to November 2023, Taiwan's exports to China fell to 35.4% of its total exports, making a 20-year low and suggesting a reduced reliance on China. So, Professor Hsu, could you please elaborate more on how can Taiwan successfully implement this kind of reducing dependence strategy on China? So what are the key to Taiwan's success in diversifying, say, our exports and reduce our reliance on China?
Yes, just follow what Marcin has mentioned. We don't use the term de-risking, but in Taiwan we have a much longer history than the European Union.
We have to, right?
Yeah, we have to diversify our markets and also diversify our reliance on Chinese labor. For example, for our labor-intensive industry, and therefore, in the past 3 decades since we opened up to Chinese market, and the government from time to time, regardless of blue or green, have tried to warn enterprises to rebalance their approach, not to depend too much on Chinese market. And however, that strategy has not been working very well in the first 2 decades. But since after the U.S.-China trade war, companies now realize they have to diversify their market, and therefore we've seen this significant shift away from Chinese market as well as Chinese as an investment investment destination in the past few years. And therefore, exports are now much more diversified, with the U.S. now becoming Taiwan's second largest export market. And also our foreign investment also diversified. Now, China in the past 3 years, from 2018 to 2022, only accounted for around 1/3 of our total outbound investment, while last year, 2023, China fall behind the U.S. To become the second largest destination for our outbound investment, because TSMC, for example, right now have huge investment in the United States. And therefore, we can say in the past 5 years, the government as well as the business community at large have understood the risk, and now try very hard to diversify their markets to reduce their dependence on China.
Professor Hsu, you talk about maybe there's a defining moment. That was the trade war between U.S. and China. I'm just wondering, if the U.S.-China remains very close together, do you think that Taiwan will be very successful in diversifying our exports?
Well, I would say from the data we observe, actually Taiwan's reducing investment in China started a few years before the U.S.-China trade war in 2018. Actually started in 2015. When Taiwanese company already felt pain in China because, for example, they tried to replace Taiwan investment by their own suppliers, what we call the rise of the red supply chain. And also there are other difficulties in China for Taiwan company to operate. And therefore, that kind of relocation took place even before the U.S.-China trade war. However, that trade war actually triggered a large-scale relocation or reconsideration of China's position in companies' overall investment strategy. So that really speed up Taiwan company to diversify.
So definitely business people have to be forward-looking, and I think because of the long-term business relationship and even cultural or relationship between Taiwan and China, so maybe that's why they can see this happen, right?
Yes, I can also say something about it's because Taiwanese company always follow the market. Yeah, because we are very small economy, and therefore Taiwanese company have always been very outward-looking and also export-oriented. So if they smell something risky or something dangerous in some market, and they will definitely try to relocate. So it's the business nature.
Very good. So we talk about the situation in Taiwan. Also at the China-EU summit, Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, highlighted the growing trade imbalance between China and Europe, which has doubled in the past 2 years to nearly 400 billion euros. She also declared that European leaders would not accept a prolonged trade imbalance, that they possess the market protective tools. So Marcin, could you please tell us what would be the main factors to this kind of trade imbalance?
The European Commission is very clear about its own assessment of reasons behind this high trade imbalance, and it mentions protectionist measures of the Chinese government, also overcapacity in production in China, which has global spillover effects, and also lack of market access for European companies in China. But I think that we can also endeavor to go beyond this three-point explanation of the European Commission and look at tariff barriers, non-tariff barriers, and also legal protections. So in terms of tariff barriers, China still maintains very protectionist measures, trying to stimulate domestic manufacturing and discourage imports. So, for example, tariffs on vehicles remain pronouncedly high. Only approximately 5% of cars driven in China are imported, compared to about 33% of vehicles in Germany, that has one of the strongest automobile sectors globally. With non-tariff barriers, that relates to the point that I mentioned earlier, lack of market access for European companies, and also diverging standards that is particularly visible in the food sector, where China imposes very strict food safety measures for international exporters. And then especially when it comes to trade in high technologies. The problems with rule of law in China and insufficient intellectual property protections discourage many business people from going to China as their main destination, given that they fear they might not have proper access to courts in terms of disputes.
So Marcin, just talk about some important factors why there is such huge trade imbalance between Europe and China, including lack of market access, the protectionist approach adopted by China, and also overcapacity in terms of manufacturing. So looking ahead, what measures will Europe take to try to de-risk their ties with China, or how can they reverse the situation?
I think that it remains to be seen how the European Union will go about its efforts to lower its trade deficit with China. Even though the last EU-China summit is a good sign that both sides are open to dialogue, there are very few tangible takeaways from that in-person meeting which took place in Beijing. And looking at the Chinese readout following the summit, we clearly see that the Chinese side does not accept European claims about measures that limit market access or which introduce unfair competition in EU-China trade, and there isn't really a very strong solution. So the European Union will surely continue de-risking through geographic diversification to reduce its dependencies on the Chinese market, but then at the same time it also has more defensive tools at its disposal, particularly anti-dumping investigations. So one of the major events that shows that EU-China relations are currently in their nadir was the launch of an investigation into electric vehicle imports from China. At the same time, we should remember that even though it's a flagship case, it is not the only investigation that was launched in the last few months by the European Union vis-à-vis China. There are other investigations related to, for example, critical chemicals. Titanium dioxide is an example here. So through these investigations, the European Union will try to uphold a liberal rule-based trade order also in its dealing with China.
So Professor Hsu just talked about how the business people in Taiwan, they're very savvy, they follow the market, so they have done quite a good job in diversifying the market. Do you think that there are any tips that Taiwan can maybe share to other countries in the world if they would like to diversify their business relationship, not just relying on China? What tips could you share?
Well, I have to say Taiwan-China economic relation or Taiwan business response to China has been a very unique experiences because after Taiwan and China were admitted to the WTO, Taiwan still maintain restrictive policies against China, and therefore different from European Union or other WTO member, they have to 100% open up to Chinese market, but we still maintain that kind of restriction, which help Taiwan to protect itself. And Taiwan business responses in the past year actually can be shared with some other countries. The first is they need to diversify and explore other market. Now Taiwan consider the United States and also EU and also Southeast Asian country to be the major market because they find potentials in this market, and also Taiwanese company. A lot of Taiwanese company have been very successful differentiating from their products with Chinese product, and therefore they can find their own way. So I think that is something that other countries or other foreign business can learn from Taiwan, that you need to explore international market while trying to reduce your reliance on China, and all this take time. You cannot just shift away from China to other markets.
It can happen overnight, right?
Yeah, and for Taiwan, it takes 5 years or even longer to do that kind of diversification.
Yes, so Professor Hsu talked about the importance we need to explore different market, and you also talk about the situation situation in terms of Taiwan's trade with China, it's a unique case, and also Taiwan is very small, not like Europe. Europe is so big. But based on your observation, Marcin, do you think that is there any lessons that maybe Europeans can learn from the Taiwan model when dealing with China and trying to reduce the trade imbalance?
I think that there are positive lessons for the European Union and also other economies which are looking to diversify from Taiwan's new southbound policy, the flagship foreign policy initiative of the Tsai Ing-wen administration. I think that a feature of the new southbound policy is that it rests on two main pillars. One of them is economic, and it calls for greater integration of regional supply chains and facilitates Taiwan's efforts at diversification. But the second pillar is focused on strengthening people-to-people relations between Taiwan and the 18 target countries of the policy. And I believe that what is often a missing element in developing economic policies is this foundation of mutual understanding. So outreach to new markets might often be difficult due to language barriers, due to cultural barriers, limited points of entry into the new markets. So I think that this two parallel track approach of simultaneously strengthening economic relations while also expanding people-to-people exchanges is a good model which the European Union could also follow.
India might be eventually the biggest market in the future. How can Taiwan increase, or how can Europe increase its trade with the largest or the potentially largest economy in the world?
India is a very huge market, but right now the Taiwan-Indian trade has been very small, and also our investment going to India is very small. I think it's less than $3 billion US, though a lot of new investment were made in the recent years. So Taiwan definitely will continue to work with India, especially in several sectors, including the ICT sectors, including the semiconductor, and also including for example, the EV, the electric vehicle. But I think the Indian and Taiwan too will need to provide more policy support to Taiwanese company, and also India will need to work more with Taiwan and other countries to develop its supply chain.
Thank you very much. If you like our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, and hit subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching our show today. Stay safe and see you next time.